Alright, so we're now ready to add the logic, the JavaScript, to our quiz. So let's go to script.js. Alright, and let's just make sure that everything is linked okay. We want to make sure that our our JavaScript file is being read. So I'm just going to put an alert. Okay. So what we need to do is, if we look at the HTML and we look at the form tag, we're saying on submit we want to return a function called submit answers. Alright, so we want to create that function. So we'll do function submit answers. Alright, now the first thing I want to do is just set a couple variables. Alright, so I want to set the total number of questions. Okay, so we'll have a variable called total, and that's going to be set to 5. And basically this will be used when the results are shown. Okay, so if you get 4 out of 5, that 5 is going to come from this total. Alright, and we want to set the score, and of course we're going to set that to 0 before anybody does anything. Alright, next we want to get the user input. Whoops. Okay, so get the user input. We're going to create some variables, say, so Q1. And the way that we're going to target this is we're going to use the form and the actual field names. Alright, so if we look at our form, it has the name of quiz form. Alright, and then the first input here has a name of Q1, which all of these should be. Okay, so this is actually wrong. These all should be Q1, just like these are all Q2, Q3. Alright, so we know which question we're talking about. And also the IDs here, this is also wrong. This should be Q1, A, B, C, and D. Sorry about that. Hope that didn't mess you up too bad. So Q1A, Q1B, C, and D. Alright, and these are right because I just pasted those in. So I'm going to save that and then go back to the script, and we're going to say document.forms. Okay, so basically this here is going to grab all the forms on the page, and we don't want that in case there wasn't 2 forms on the page. So we want to use the name of the form, quiz form, and then also grab the input with the name of Q1. Alright, and then we need the value, so we're going to say dot value. Alright, now that'll get us whatever the user types into, selects for question 1. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, and we want 5 of these, and change this to Q2, 3, 4, and 5. Same thing here. 2, 3, 4, whoops, and 5. Alright, let's do a little test here and just do an alert. We'll just alert Q1. So this will give us, this will alert whatever the user checks for question 1. Alright, so we'll check on B, submit, and it's going to give us the value, which is B. Okay, C, wait a minute, C. Alright, C and D. Alright, good. So that's settled. We're getting the user input, putting it in the correct variables. Now what we want to do is do a little bit of validation, because right now, let's go ahead and just get rid of that alert, and if we reload and we submit, it's submitting the form, but it's letting us submit it without having anything checked, and we don't want that. Alright, so we're going to do some very, very basic validation. When you build real applications, you want to have really solid validation on both the client side and the server side if you're using PHP or some kind of server side language. Alright, so what we're going to do is just do some if statements. So we're going to say if Q1 is equal to null, okay, which is basically nothing, or, okay, so the or, we use these double pipes, okay. You also could just say or, but I always use the pipe characters. Question 1 is equal to nothing. Okay, so just blank quotes. All right. Then what do we want to do? We want to alert the user, and we're just going to say you missed question 1. All right, and then we just want to return false. We don't want the form to submit, and this equal sign should actually be a double equal. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. So if we go ahead and submit without checking answer question 1, we get a you missed question 1, and you can see it's not going to submit. All right, so we want to do that for all of the questions. All right, so if we do select one from question 1, it goes ahead and submits. Now, what we want to do is inside of the function at the end, we want to make sure that we return false, because we're not actually submitting the form. All right, when you submit a form, it usually will go to like a PHP file or some kind of server-side file that can actually process it. When you're using JavaScript, you're catching that submission before it actually goes through. All right, and that's what we're doing with this on submit. Okay, we're catching it in submit answers, and if we just let it go through without returning false, it's going to just try submitting it to wherever. All right, so return false will stop that from happening. Okay, so moving on for our validation, we have 5 questions. So what we would do is do this 5 times and then change this to 2, this to 3, and so on. But that is very repetitive and definitely something that should be put inside of a loop instead of having this 5 times. Okay, so what we're going to do is get rid of these 2, and we're going to create a loop. Okay, so we'll do the loop right under it, and then we'll get rid of this. All right, so we're going to use a for loop. Okay, so we want to say for, and a for loop takes 3 parameters. The first, we're going to set a variable, so we're going to set I equal to 1, and then a semicolon. All right, the next parameter is going to be the condition, so we want to say as long as I is less than or equal to the total number of questions, and then the last parameter is going to be an increment, so it's going to be I plus plus, which is going to just increment it by 1. All right, so the first run through, I is going to be equal to 1, and then it'll run again, and then I will be equal to 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and then it won't match this condition anymore. It's not going to be less than or equal to 5, so it'll stop. All right, so what we want it to do is basically this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this and then paste it right in here. All right, so right now what it's going to do is it's going to loop 5 times, but it's going to check this condition over and over for 5 times, and the condition is Q1 is equal to null or Q1 is equal to nothing. And we don't want that. We want it to test Q1 the first time, then Q2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so what we need to do here is we can't just say QI and replace it like this. All right, that's going to look for a variable called QI. So we need to use the eval function, which will help us make this actually say Q1. All right, so what we need to do is say eval, and then inside here we want Q. Okay, so the letter Q, and then we want to concatenate on a 1. I'm sorry, an I. All right, so this here will give us Q1 the first time, and then 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so let's just copy that and also put that right here. All right, and then it's going to say you missed question 1. We don't want that 5 times. We want the I, so we're just going to concatenate on with the plus sign the I variable. Okay, and then return false is good. So let's go ahead and try that. Okay, so if we reload and I try to submit, you missed question 1. Okay, so we'll fill in question 1. You missed question 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, and then finally it'll let us submit. All right, so the next thing we want to do is set our answers. All right, so I'm going to do that using an array. Set answer. Actually, we should say set correct answers. All right, so we can do this with var answers, and then we're going to set it to an array, and then we're going to set the answers. All right, for instance, if the first question, the answer is B. B. All right, the second question, the answer is A. Okay, you want to put all the correct answers. So A, B, D, B, and D. Okay, so this is the answers array. What we want to do now is check the answers. Alright, so we'll say if, we'll say if Q1 is equal to answers 0. Now remember, arrays always start with 0. Alright, so this here is actually going to be answers 0. This one will be answers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, arrays always begin with 0. So what we're going to do, if that's correct, if it's the correct answer, we're going to take the score variable, which right now is 0, and we're going to increment it 1. Alright, so basically if they get this right, their score will increase by 1. And we want to do this for every question. So if we take this 2, 3, 4, and 5. Alright, so this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this would be question 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then down here, for now, let's just do the alert. Okay, and what we're going to alert is a string. We'll say you scored, and then we want to concatenate on the score. Okay, so plus, and then the score variable. You scored something out of, and then here we want to concatenate the total. Alright, we'll put a space here. Alright, so let's see if this works. Okay, reload. I'm just going to choose anything. You scored 3 out of 5. Alright, so let's try to get them all right. So script, this one is src, alert, false, no. Scored 5 out of 5. Alright, so it's working. Now this code here is also very repetitive, so I want to try and put this in a loop as well. So I'm going to take this same for statement here and put it here, and then take this. Okay, get rid of these. Alright, so as it is now, it's going to check Q1 through every iteration. So we want to get the correct variable, so we can use the same eval function we used up here. And just replace that. Alright, now we can't just simply put I here because the I is starting as 1. Alright, and the array starts at 0. So it won't be matching up. We'll be checking Q1 against 1 if we just put I here. So what we need to do is put I, take away 1. Okay, so that way it'll give us 0. All right, when it's question 2, it'll look at the answer in the 1 position, which is here, and so on. So let's save that and give that a try. Okay, so let's say right, 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 and then we'll choose 1 wrong. So submit, and you can see now we have 4 out of 5. All right, so we're pretty much there. The last thing I want to do is I just want to insert the results onto the page as well. So down here above the alert, let's put a comment, display results, and I'm going to say variable results is equal to document dot get element by ID, and the ID that we want to get is results. Alright, and then we want to take that variable results and set the HTML. So we can do dot inner HTML. Okay, and we can set that to whatever we'd like. We're going to have an H3, say you scored, and then have a span, and then we want to concatenate the score variable. Okay, and then we'll put the closing span, and then we'll do out of, and then we want the total wrapped in the span as well. Total span, and then the closing H3, and then a quote. Okay, and it looks like we need to make sure that this returns false at the end. I thought I already did that, but I must have deleted it. Alright, so let's go ahead and try that. So we'll reload. Okay, submit. We still get the alert, and then at the top we get you scored 5 out of 5. Alright, so that's it. Our quiz is complete. We have a very minimal amount of code here, especially since we've used those loops. We only have 36 lines. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next project.
Hello, let's continue with this quiz program. We'll make version 3 today, and this is inspired by this question. Should all the questions and answers be stored in the code? The code will get longer if there are more questions, say 100 or more. And the code would get longer, and that's a great question because these questions for the quiz should probably be in a file instead of being in the program, or a database, but just to be simpler, we'll make it in a file today. Here's such a file, questions.txt. It's in the same directory as the program here. And the questions are separated from the answers by a tab. So when you type in the question, you press the tab, and then it should move over some number of spaces, and then you type the answer. Okay, so there's a file with some questions in it, and so now let's see what we need to do to modify the code. We were creating this list of tuples, and we're going to change that so we can read it from a file. So to read from a file, we use something like this, with open questions.txt as f, and then we'll say lines gets f dot read lines. So this opens the file for reading and uses f to save the handle to that. I forget the precise term for that. And then we read all the lines from it and store that into a variable called lines. So we're going to get rid of all this. And where we used to have questions and answers, we're still dealing with lines. So we're going to shuffle all the lines. And then let's come down to here. And we're going to say I'm going to cut this, and then for line in lines. You remember from the last lesson that we're using a slice operation to extract just part of it, in case the user doesn't want to answer all the questions. And one by one, the lines get assigned to this variable called line. And now we're going to take that line and we're going to split it. We're going to do a few things with it. First is we're going to use strip, which removes the end of line character from the end of the line. And then we're going to split it on the tab character. And then we're going to assign those two pieces, the question and the answer, to these two variables. Okay, so line is one line of the file. Here's the file. So one line would be like that. And then we trim off this new line character at the end that you don't see here, but it causes us to go to the next line. And then we'll split on the tab character here. So that'll give us the question and the right answer into two different variables. Okay, let's run. How many questions? One question. How many beats per measure? In 2/4 time. 2/4 time, that's 2 quarter notes, so they're 2 beats. And it says right. You got one right and the following wrong. This is not related to the file thing, but I want to fix this too. It shouldn't say the following wrong if none of them were wrong. So let's just change this. You got a certain number of right. And then we'll say, and then we're not going to, then we'll say, if there are some wrong answers, then print, you got these wrong. And then we will show all the wrong ones. So let's run again. How many questions? 0. You got 0 right. Well, that's okay. We'll run again. How many questions? 1. And a violin has 4 strings. And it says right to this answer. And then it says you got 1 right. Good. Now let's get at least 1 wrong. No, the answer is percussion. You got 0 right. You got these wrong. And then it lists all the questions that are wrong. Okay, so to review, we took the questions that were inside the program and we moved them into a file here. And the question and the answer are separated by a tab character. And then we wrote code to read the file. And we use this with as along with open. And then we use read lines to get all the lines of a file. And then as before, we mix up the lines. And then we look at the lines one by one. And for each line, we strip off the new line character at the end, and then we split it on the tab character. The rest of the program is the same, except for the last part I changed to be a little bit more precise about if you got something wrong. Okay, there you go. And I hope that answers this question.